Hey everybody, Dr. Chris Dost here. Thanks for joining me for this video. Today we're going to be covering Daniel chapter 1 and verse 9 in the Hebrew text, but we'll also be looking at the Masorah. We'll have a look at a couple of Masoretic notes so you get a little bit more accustomed to using the Masorah Parva. We'll also be looking at the cantillation marks of Daniel chapter 1 and verse 9. And we'll also have a look at the Septuagint, both the Old Greek and the Theodotian, comparing it and contrasting it with the Hebrew. All right, before we get started, I just wanted to encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Most of my viewers are not subscribers, but if you're a regular watcher of this channel, I'd appreciate your becoming a subscriber. It's a great show of support. Also, be sure to hit the like button. I'm trying to get 100 likes for this video just to help spread the word about this channel. And just a reminder, as is the case with all of my other videos, be sure to check out my Patreon page where you can watch the full unabridged video. Thanks so much for supporting the channel, and let's get started. All right, so here we go. Let's have a look at Daniel chapter 1 and verse 9 in the Hebrew. It says, Vayiten ha'Elohim et Daniel lechesed u'lerachamim lifnei sar hasarisim. And now let's read it slowly together. Vayiten ha'Elohim et Daniel lechesed u'lerachamim lifnei sar hasarisim. Vayiten ha'Elohim et Daniel lechesed u'lerachamim lifnei sar hasarisim. So the first word is vayiten, which comes from the root nun tav nun, nun tav nun. It is a third person consecutive preterite, So the root is nun tav nun. You can see that the tav has a dagesh, and that is because the first nun, the first root letter nun, has assimilated, and so the tav is doubled. This is preceded by a yud. The yud is the third person, masculine singular, personal prefix in the prefix conjugation, but this is not a straight-up prefix conjugation. It's a consecutive preterite, which means before it is a vav, generally vocalized with a patach, with the personal prefix doubled. That's why there is a dagesh in the yud. The I prefix vowel, the chirik, underneath the yud, is characteristic in biblical Hebrew of the G stem, and so this is going to be a G stem prefix conjugation. And this has an I-class theme vowel, I-class E-type, a tsere. And so there is nothing unusual about this form, vayiten. This form appears all over the place in the Hebrew Bible, and it means now he gave, and he gave. Sometimes it could be then he gave. Now in biblical Hebrew narrative, it's common to have the verb first and the subject second. And so our assumption then is that the next word will be the subject. The second word is ha-Elohim. Literally, this means the God. Elohim, properly speaking, is a plural word. It has the chirik yud mem suffix, which is characteristic of the masculine plural in biblical Hebrew. And ha-Elohim also has the definite article at the beginning. There's a hey. Here, we're not going to have the patach, which is the typical vowel. Instead, we're going to have a kamatz, and that is because the aleph, which is the first consonant of the word Elohim, cannot take the dagesh, and therefore we get what's called compensatory lengthening. The short vowel a, patach, is lengthened into the long kamatz to compensate for the fact that aleph cannot take the dagesh. So ha-Elohim, literally the God. Now ha-Elohim is a plural form, properly speaking. However, the verb is singular. And this is very common in biblical Hebrew for Elohim when referring to the God of Israel, as opposed to the pantheon of a neighboring country, for instance. In biblical Hebrew, ha-Elohim will take a singular verb. Let's look at a few other examples of this. So the first example in the Hebrew Bible where Elohim is the subject of a verb that is third person, masculine, and singular comes right from Genesis 1:1. Bereshit bara Elohim et hashmaim ve'et haaretz, which, when God began to create, or if you want to go with the standard translation, in the beginning, God created. Elohim is the subject, and bara is a third-person masculine singular verb. Next, Genesis chapter 1 and verse 3. Vayomer Elohim yihi or vayhi or. Vayomer, this is a third-person masculine singular, consecutive preterite form in the G stem of Aleph Mem Resh. And he said, then he said, and God is the subject. Then God said, or and God said. All right, then Genesis chapter 1 and verse 4. Vayar Elohim et ha'or kitov. And God saw, so Resh Aleph Hey. This is a consecutive preterite as well. The Hey is elided. It disappears, but it's a third-person masculine singular. Then God saw the light, et ha'or kitov, that it was good. Vayavdel Elohim, and God divided. This is a hifil or a C stem, third-person masculine singular. And God separated or God divided, ben ha'or uven ha'choshech, between the light and between the darkness. Just have a look at one more. Let's look at Exodus chapter 2, verse 24, Exodus 2:24, where it says, Vayishma Elohim et na'akatam. Now God heard, or then God heard. So Vayishma is a third-person masculine singular G stem consecutive preterite of the root shin mem ayin. That's the verb. And then the masculine plural form, Elohim, is the subject. But Elohim is plural in form, as in the other verses, but it is singular in function. And so we have the singular verb, Vayishma Elohim, et na'akatam. And na'akatam means their groaning. They're groaning. Et is the definite direct object marker. So then God heard their groaning. Vayizkor Elohim et brito. And so Vayizkor, again, third masculine singular, G stem, consecutive preterite of the root Zayin Kaf Resh. Then God remembered his covenant. Et brito. Then God remembered his covenant. Et Avraham. Here et means with Abraham, et Yitzchak, with Isaac, ve'et Yaakov, and with Jacob. Vayishma Elohim et na'akatam, vayizkor Elohim et brito, et Avraham, et Yitzchak, ve'et Yaakov. Now I want to point out something that Juan Moro-Oka raised in section 150F, which deals with the agreement of the verb. And they write there that with a plural of excellence or of majesty, the verb is usually in the singular, and always so in the later stage of the language. So the examples that are cited here are 1 Chronicles 17:21. There it says, Umi ka'amcha Yisrael, and who is like your people Israel? Umi ka'amcha Yisrael. Goy echad ba'aretz, one nation on the earth, or on earth. Asher halach Elohim liftot lo, whom God went to redeem for himself, as a people. And so here we have a third masculine singular suffix conjugation G stem with ha Elohim as the subject. But notice the parallel in 2 Samuel 7:23. Umicha macha ki Yisrael, and who is like your people, like Israel. Goy echad ba'aretz, one nation on the earth. Asher halchu Elohim liftot lo le'am, whom God went to redeem for himself, to be a people. So here we get halchu, the third masculine plural suffix conjugation with Elohim as the subject. So there is some variance in the Hebrew Bible, but the point here is that it's very common to see Elohim or ha-Elohim with a masculine singular verb. All right, let's head back to Daniel 1:9 now. So, Vayitain ha-Elohim et Daniel, then God gave Daniel, lechesed u'lerachamim. Lechesed, chesed means favor. So what's the deal with the preposition le before it? And this is essentially functioning as a direct object marker. And God gave Daniel favor. We're not going to translate the preposition le. U lerachamim. and compassion, or and mercy. So u is the conjunctive prefix, meaning and. Le is the preposition, just like we saw with l'chesed, but that's not going to be translated because it is also serving here as a direct object marker. So Vayetein ha'Elohim et Daniel l'chesed u'lerachamim, and God gave Daniel favor and compassion, favor and mercy. Lifnei sa hasarisim, before, and then we have a construct phrase, sa hasarisim, before the chief of the eunuchs. So sa is a masculine singular construct noun. So before the chief of ha-sarisim, the eunuchs. All right, now that we've analyzed and translated the text, let's have a look at the cantillation marks. So starting with the last word, ha-sarisim, we have the disjunctive accent siluk. And under the first mem in u'lerachamim, we have the other major disjunctive accent, atnach. And so these two accents divide the verse essentially into two. All right, so let's deal with the final clause first, lifnei sar hasarisim. And so lifnei has the tifcha, and so the tifcha is a disjunctive accent that comes before atnach or siluk. But between the tifcha and the siluk, we have a conjunctive accent. Thanks so much for checking out this video today. Just a reminder that the full video is available on my Patreon page. So if you want to hear the entire discussion, just head on over there. The link is in the description down below. See you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.